1 year ago, I was in France, where I got this nice hat, and with a few other lucky people in this room today, and Bob, and we were on a tour titled Champagne, Pipes, and Pictures.
Paintings.
Paintings. It was one of the most memorable tours I've ever taken, and that's saying something. As a well-traveled friend said, this trip looks outstanding. You'll never notice the cold gray weather in France at that time of year. And we didn't. 7 years ago, Ned came to New Canaan to join St. Mark's leadership team. 8 years ago, Ned was the guest organist in a program at St. Mark's that was featuring the Norwalk Orchestra and the Mendelssohn Choir in a commemorative program in November. Many of us in the audience said, Ned needs to be our next music director. And he accepted that call. He will share with you today why Rotary International helped send him in our direction. Let's welcome Ned to our community to hear his fantastic story about why the work of Rotary and Rotary International is so worthwhile.
Thank you, Jean, and thank you everyone for your welcome. It's great to see so many faces that I know, and I look forward to getting to know the rest of you. I'm standing here right now because of Rotary. That's not the end of my speech. But basically, it's true. And I apologize if what I'm about to say is, well, the story of my life, but that's what it is. And the events that led to my current position as Director of Music Ministries at St. Mark's. I was awarded the Rotary Foundation Educational Award during the 1979-1980 academic year. My entire professional life, and to a great extent my personal life, was and remains different than it would have been without that life-changing experience. Life-changing is a well-worn expression, but in my case it is undeniably true. I was born in Asheville, North Carolina, 69 years and 2 days ago. We were in France last year for my birthday with Anne and Robert and Jean. My father was stationed in Germany in the early 50s for 18 months. And my mother joined him for the last 12 months of that period. They traveled on weekends to France, Holland, Switzerland, Italy, etc., and took photos and 8mm movies. It was those images that instilled in me very early in my life that there was more to that life, or perhaps there would be more to that life than the beautiful mountains of Asheville, North Carolina. I am a musician and always have been. I didn't choose it. Music chose me. Both of my parents played the piano, and my mother's mother played, and my father's father played the piano, and he was also a church organist. My mother told me that I started picking out Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star when I was 3 years old. And she gave me my first lessons. From there, I expanded to playing the violin, the trumpet, the oboe, the French horn, and then the pipe organ. I won awards in local and state competitions on the piano, violin, and organ. My 8th grade class band lacked an oboe player, and our band director came to me and said, Ned, take this oboe and learn to play it, because we have a solo in our contest piece that we have to have an oboe. So I learned to play the oboe, and but I was the first chair trumpet player at the time, so I came out on stage with the trumpet in one hand and the oboe in the other. And one of the contest judges wrote on the comments sheet, he said, does your trumpet player make his own reeds? My first job as a church organist was when I was 13 years old in Asheville. I was accepted to the Oberlin College Conservatory of Music as a pianist beginning in 1975. The new conservatory, at which you see here, was completed in 1964. Does anyone recognize the architectural style? We knew it on two very tall buildings that no longer exist.
Yeah.
Twin Towers.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's a Japanese designer, Minoru Yamasaki.
Yeah, right.
And when I saw the World Trade Centers, I said something. I recognized this. I recognized this style. And it was later that I found out. Several of my Oberlin friends were also members of the Oberlin College Choir. Now remember, I'm a pianist. I'm supposed to be a concert pianist. And I watched them perform and tour from afar. It seems to me that they were having a wonderful time and enjoying the communal aspects of making music in a group. On a whim, at the end of my freshman year at Oberlin, I auditioned for the choir, and I mentioned to the director of choral activities that I might be interested in the master's program in choral conducting, because I was somewhat interested, well, I was interested in church music, and also conducting based on the work I had done as a church organist when I was in high school. I thought, well, that might be kind of fun to do. My voice audition, he told me, was a complete disaster. But he also told me that he recognized something in me as a musician that held a bit of promise. In my fourth year at Oberlin, I entered into a 2-year program that would end at the end of 5 years. Stay with me. I got my bachelor's in piano performance and my master's in choral conducting at the end of 5 years. My student year in France was a gap year between my 4th year and 5th year. I began studying French in January of 1976 because even though I studied Latin in high school, I was somehow fascinated with the French language and soon enough everything French. In 1977, a family friend in Asheville, a Rotarian, Mr. E.C. Jolliffe, Jolly Jolliffe they used to call him, proposed to me and my parents that I interview for a Rotary scholarship. I was awarded the scholarship in 1978. There it is. My mother kept everything. In 1978, for study of the academic year 1979-1980. In addition, I was awarded 2 months of language study at the Institut de Touraine in the city of Tours, in the center, sort of in the center of France, where, according to them, the purest form of French is spoken.
Unless you live in Paris.
I was one of about 30 Rotary scholars studying French at the Institut that summer, in addition to hundreds of other young people from all over the world. I'll never forget it. I rented a room 3 blocks from the cathedral in Tours, the Cathédrale de Saint-Gatien. This was 3 blocks from my house. That was owned, not the cathedral, but my house, was owned by an elderly French woman, Madame Picmar, who was a midwife. And she had a character that matched her photo. This building, I found out, is now a small hotel. And my rooms were on the ground floor to the left of the main door as you're looking at, so right on the corner there, on the left corner. I had 2 rooms, what was originally a dining room and then a bedroom and bath behind that. Each Rotary Scholar was sponsored by a local club. Obviously my Asheville Rotary Club sponsored me to get there, and my sponsoring club in France was the Club of Bobigny, which is immediately northwest of Paris. We also had individual counselors, members of that club. My sponsor was Monsieur Paul Finel, who had been a tenor at the Paris Opera. And you see the painting on the wall, someone did of him in one of his roles. He told me which role it was. But that is Paul and his wife and his son. Another Rotarian and his family were also very kind to me, Monsieur et Madame Michel et Anne Méry, and their son Gilles. They had a house in Normandy. That's Normandy, that's not the house. Not far from Monet's house in Giverny. And they invited me out one weekend to the house, and on Sunday morning, Gilles and I got on bicycles, and we bicycled from their house to Giverny, which had not yet been opened to the public. That's how long ago this was. And we climbed up the fence, because it's completely fenced around at the time. We climbed up the fence and looked at everything. We didn't go in, but we looked at it. We looked at it. Back to the Rotary Scholarship. The process of applying to schools happens after receiving notification from Rotary International in Illinois. It's always been in Illinois, the headquarters. I applied to 5 conservatories in French-speaking countries, Switzerland, Belgium, and of course France. I got lucky, and I was accepted at the École Normale de Musique in Paris. The term École Normale sounds strange. Normal school. Well, it's a French, it designates a prestigious and elitist higher education institution, mainly training researchers, higher education teachers, and state executives. A lot of the political class in France are known as normaliens, because they went to the École Normale d'Administration, or administration. In this case, the École Normale was considered by some to be the step after the Paris Conservatory. My teacher was the famous, or perhaps infamous Jules Gentil, Gentil, which in French means nice or kind. He was not. Here is Gentil with my fellow student, Kelly McSweeney. Kelly is not smiling. There were 6 of us in his piano class, 4 Americans and 2 young women from Japan. We all survived we all lived through the year. Monsieur Gentil was very strict and very old school European teacher. He imposed his methods on just about every aspect of piano playing. And woe be unto the student that asked a question, or at least what he considered to be too many questions. Yes, I was that student. However, my playing that year was the best it had ever been, and the best it has ever been since. Rather than pursuing a program leading to a diploma from the École Normale, I made the decision with Monsieur Gentil's approval and agreement. I studied French music, Debussy, Ravel, Fauré, and Chopin, because Chopin was half French, his father was French. And so I worked mainly on those, or uniquely on those 4 composers. You probably already know this, but the type of scholarship I had was called the ambassadorial scholarship, as we were ambassadors of goodwill. How many of you remember those days? Do you remember that scholarship program? The program was instituted in 1947, and it ran until 2013, when the name was changed to Rotary Global Grant Scholarship. According to the website, global grants are for graduate students studying abroad in one of Rotary's areas of focus. Promoting peace, you probably already know this, fighting disease, providing clean water, sanitation, and hygiene, improving material and child health, supporting education, growing local economies, protecting the environment. I do not know if Rotary has continued sending musicians to places in the world where there are programs, Rotary clubs. Anyway, thanks to Monsieur Gentil's position in the Paris musical world, I was able to run an apartment in a newly built residence for student musicians in Nanterre, which is just straight west of Paris. It's a close suburb right on the other side of the Paris border, with a rapid link right into the city to either Charles de Gaulle or to Châtelet, with the RER, the Réseau Express Régional, the Regional Express Network, the fast train. The foyer, it was called the Foyer Maurice Ravel, obviously named after the French composer. It was and is interesting because it was designed and built in a style which even the French called brutaliste. However, the term is not related to the adjective brutal, which is derived from the Latin brutus, meaning heavy, dull, stupid, or unreasonable. However, some people would call that heavy and dull. The English word brutalist is in fact the anglicization of the French word brutaliste, which derives from their word for the principal building material, béton brut, new raw concrete. So brutaliste, it doesn't necessarily mean it's brutal, it just means it's concrete. There were some 100 double-level studios, kitchen, living, and workspace downstairs, and sleeping and bathroom on the upper level. And then these 100 cubes were stacked around and on top of each other, linked by steel stairs and walkways. In fact, this entire area of Nanterre was known for rather daring, or at least unusual, architecture designs for multi-unit public housing. It's hard to see, and I apologize for the quality of some of these photos. They were taken with my 110 millimeter camera 46 years ago. And some of them, I had all of them transferred to slides. So I have all these slides, which I bought a scanner and I've scanned some of them. What you can't see is that the sides of the buildings are colored, and some of them have clouds painted on them. And it was a very interesting, if an unusual, area to live in. It certainly doesn't look French, or it doesn't look Parisian. In searching for a cleaner image of the Foyer Ravel, I discovered that this once solid structure has degraded to the point where it was almost demolished, until a local historical and architectural society convinced authorities to restore it as an important example of mid-century architecture, albeit of the brutaliste style. I'm fairly certain in this photo that the studio right in the center was mine, and the door was there. The door is to the left, and here is my little upright piano. In my studio. You'll see the little small table to the right there. That was constructed from melon crates. The studios were furnished only with one small dining table and 2 dining chairs. My studio had numerous small tables and bookshelves, all beautifully crafted in melon crate, obtained from the local supermarket. As I mentioned earlier, during that year I practiced and played better than either before or after. But you might just wonder, however, why I'm principally a church musician now, which includes both conducting in ensembles and playing the organ. One Sunday morning in November of 1979, I decided I would visit the Cathedral Church of the Holy Trinity, also known as the American Cathedral in Paris. The church was designed in the early 1880s, actually the late 1870s, by the noted English architect, Gothic revivalist George Edmund Street. Street's most famous building would turn out to be the Royal Courts of Justice in London, on the Strand. Here's the interior of the cathedral. And then here is the interior, or here's the Great Hall of the Royal Courts of Justice. And this room, for those of you who have ever been in that room, this room is a giant version of the American Cathedral in Paris, or the cathedral is a small version of this one. It's stunning. Unfortunately, Street died in 1891 and didn't live to see either the opening of the cathedral or the law courts. The law courts were opened in 1882 by Queen Victoria, and Holy Trinity Church in Paris, later became the cathedral, was opened in 1886 after Street's son, Arthur Edmund Street, completed the building complex according mostly to his father's original plans. As I mentioned earlier, my year in Paris was a gap year between my 4th and 5th years. The music I heard that morning in November, to my master's level ears, was mediocre at best. I thought to myself, this place needs a decent music program. But I didn't think anything else about it because I was back to my studio in Nanterre and banged out more Forêt, Debussy, and Ravel. During that year, I kept regularly a diary of my thoughts and experiences. I still have that diary, and in preparing this talk for you, I researched my return visit to the cathedral. February the 3rd, 1980, Sunday, 2 p.m., this is when I was writing, so this was after church. Went to church this morning at the cathedral. Nice yet plain service. Different organist. This one no better, in fact, worse than the last guy. Choir did well on a difficult unison Sowerby anthem. I screwed up my courage to tell the new organist, Miss Susan Woodson, that I was perhaps interested in joining the choir. She was a Juilliard student there for 1 year, studied with Jerry Hancock, if some of you know Jerry Hancock from St. Thomas Fifth Avenue. We talked for a bit. I explained how I wouldn't be there every Sunday because I would be traveling, but I wanted to sing. She said, come anyway. After the service, I realized what she had told me, that she would only be there for a year, meaning the job was going to be open. Well, my mind raced, and I thought of how nice it would be to have that job. I could do it. Oh, the possibilities. This is all me writing. Later in the journal I wrote, during the service I asked that God show me the path to happiness in my work, my future, and personal satisfaction. I felt that it was staring me in the face. To cut to the end of what's turning out to be a long story, I decided toward the end of that wonderful year in Paris, thanks to you, when I played the piano better than ever, that I didn't want to be a pianist, that I wanted to make music with people rather than at them. And so I had already been playing in churches, and I decided at that point not only that I wanted to be a church musician, but I wanted the job at the cathedral. But before I fast forward my life for you between 1980 and now, my student year in France was not all about the piano. Far from it. The experience of living in Paris, the friendships made, the music and musicians I met or heard, my travels around France and beyond. But yet again, these experiences were all possible because of Rotary. For example, January 17 to 20, 1980, the Rotary Club of Briançon, which is in the French Alps near the Italian border, invited all the Rotary scholars in France, 64 of them came that year for a 4-day weekend of skiing, mixed with long meals, multilingual conversations late into the night, and unforgettable moments in our young lives. We were, as individuals, citizens of many different countries, but together we were citizens of the world. It was one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life. As is customary in France, as Scott knows, great occasion. Scott and I overlapped 2 years. You arrived in 2008 and I left in 2010. But we didn't know each other. We met across the street at the Presbyterian Church. As is customary in France, great occasions call for many hours spent at the table. On Saturday, the 19th of January, we counted we were at table for 7 hours between breakfast, lunch, and dinner. On Sunday, a cross-country ski competition was held. Out of 27 boursiers, the male Rotary scholars, behind 2 Californians and a Finn, 4th place. And I had never cross-country skied before. Never. Maybe I should have stuck with it. Anyway. It was an extraordinary weekend, and we all still talk about it. These are my friends, Laurel and Peggy. Laurel, who's on the left, she looked like a young Catherine Deneuve. And then here's some of my other buddies from the weekend. It was an extraordinary experience, as I We were very, very happy, full of hope for the future because of our status that you awarded us, ambassadors of goodwill. Later in the spring, the Rotary clubs of Reims, Épernay, and Chalon-sur-Marne, which some of us know as Chalons-en-Champagne now, they changed the name, invited us for 3 days of meals and champagne tasting. This would explain my current insistence that bubbly can only come from a certain area in the world, namely Champagne. So what happened to me after that glorious year? I returned to the States in July the 7th of 1980. On August the 8th of that year, back in Asheville, I played what was probably the best performance of my life at the local Civic Center in Asheville, which sponsored me, the Rotary Club of Asheville. It was a benefit for a local rehabilitation hospital, the Tom's Hospital. Later, my own father spent time after that after he had a stroke in 1995. I finished my studies at Oberlin in 1981 and was hired as organist choirmaster at my first St. Mark's parish in Dalton, Georgia, carpet capital of the world, if anyone's remembering that. And when I moved there, it was the city in the country that had the highest number of millionaires per capita because of the carpet industry. This is probably Dalton carpet around right here. In 1986, I went back to Oberlin as interim director of choral activities, replacing my Oberlin choral conductor, professor, and mentor as visiting instructor while he was on sabbatical. After that semester, he counseled me to move to Atlanta as the enormously influential American conductor Robert Shaw. Some of you may remember the Robert Shaw Chorale from decades and decades ago. It was being created at Emory University. And he hoped, be helpful with one of the aspects of the Robert Shaw Institute. A choral festival in the southwest of France where Robert and his wife Caroline had a house. Down in a little town called Couzoux, which is near Rocamadour, if any of you know where Rocamadour is. You been to Rocamadour? Yeah. We're going there in 2027. Let's see. For 2 years, I organized everything. I was hired as the assistant to the director of the institute, and from 2 years, I organized everything for the choral festival in France from the U.S. side. And then for the third year, I was involved with it. I had already moved to Paris, and I was organized everything from the French side: housing, the concerts, financing, meals, transportation. It actually got to be too much, and I had to leave because I also wanted to spend time at my new job at the cathedral. Robert Shaw wrote me a glowing recommendation. I got that job and moved back to Paris in December of 1989. I held that position. Oh, that's Robert in the blue shirt there, and that's me on the extreme right. He's complaining about something, I'm sure. But it was we had wonderful experiences. That was in front of the church near Couzoux, the church where we performed every year, the town called Gramat, G-R-A-M-A-T, and we always recorded there every year, and at least 2 of his Grammy recordings were made in that church, with natural acoustics. They didn't treat it at all. Okay, where am I? Okay. So I had the position in Paris. Here's me at the organ with more hair, and then here's one of my publicity shots. I was there for 21 years, and if you count my student year in Paris, I was there in France for 22 years, which until recently was 1/3 of my life. Amazing. So in 2010, I went back to the United States for a similar position at St. John's Episcopal Cathedral in Los Angeles. I was there for 7 years, and in 2017, I returned to Asheville to be with my mother during her declining years. And as Jean said, in 2018, in November, on the 10th, I think it was, at the invitation of the president of the board of the Norwalk Symphony, who sang in my choir in Paris, Chris Bell, if any of you know Chris Bell. He sings in our choir at St. Mark's. He moved back to the States, ended up in Norwalk, and ended up as president of the board. And he invited me beginning, and we started talking in 2016, for me to come in 2018 and play the Punai organ concerto, and also the Forte Requiem. I came up, played the concert. The job was open. They put their hooks in me, and the cathedral in Paris is a gorgeous Gothic revival building. The cathedral in Los Angeles is an absolutely stunning Spanish Romanesque building. When it was built, it was the largest and wealthiest parish west of the Mississippi. But unfortunately, they didn't finish it because it was opened in 1925. 4 years later came the Depression, and it was never finished in the original style. But it was a gorgeous building. When I saw the pictures of St. Mark's, I thought, ooh, that's not really interesting at all. But then I came up and I saw the building, I met the people, I played the organ, I experienced the place, and I said, I think I can do this. So in 2019, I moved up in February the 17th of 2019, which was, as I said, was my birthday, but it was also the first service at St. Mark's. To reduce this entire narrative to a few phrases, here goes. Over and over again, in life, we live through singular moments in time or experiences that change everything that happens afterwards. Just one little encounter with one person or one thing that happens to you, everything is different after that. That's what happened to me with the Rotary Scholarship. I wouldn't be standing here. I didn't know I was that good of a skier, so I wouldn't even been. So I could not be more grateful to you and the organization that is above us all right now. And again, thank you all for your welcome. Wait, I'm not finished. And speaking of St. Mark's, two things. The choir needs tenors and basses. So if any of you would like to sing, I'll make it happen. Okay? I'm told I can work miracles. And remember, in a choir, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Okay, just remember that. Singing in a choir is one of the healthiest things you can do. So let me know. The other thing is, and Jean kindly brought the flyers. A week from this coming Saturday, we're doing a program we're calling Melodies and Madrigals from Renaissance to Broadway. And Anne here happens to be the chair of the president. You got the chair? No, the chair. Chair of the board of our organization called the Friends of Music at St. Mark's. Anyway, it's everything from Italian Renaissance to Broadway to Tchaikovsky to Sting. Now, most of you don't know who Sting is, and I don't think I could, if he walked in here, I wouldn't recognize him, but I don't know music. But it's, as Father Peter says, it's a program of music that you would not hear in church. And so you can, if you want to take one of those flyers, you can click on the.
I have more.
Click on the QR code. Do we have time for questions? Not really. Really quick.
One question.
One really juicy question.
One brilliant question.
Margaret.
How hard is it to play a church organ versus a piano?
Oh.
I mean, I know that's a totally wrong question.
Okay, it's easy to do. I've done this before. A piano, your field of concentration is here, 88 keys, and you got the 3 pedals down there. With the organ, your field of concentration is this.
I do. It just seems like so much.
And at the organ at St. Mark's, there are 3 keyboards. The largest organ has, I think, 7 keyboards. So it takes a long time to get your coordination right between your hands and feet. Remember, you're playing a keyboard with your feet.
Yeah.
Years after I had played the organ, I was playing a recital in St. Philip's Cathedral in Atlanta, and I was playing a piece of Louisville, French composer, and all of a sudden I realized I have no idea where my feet are supposed to go now. It has to become absolute second nature. You can't look down at your feet. with all this happening. So
I
it's
just
difficult.
can't even imagine how hard it is
Yeah.
with all that.
Plus, you have to learn what to do with the stops and all that. So
Yeah, crazy.
Anyway.
That's wonderful.
there was a lot to say.